Hey, welcome to Half the Battle.
You know, last week's little aside about Lady J's huge diamond javelin got me thinking. What other outlandishly expensive things do the Joes apparently have the budget for?
So I made a little list.
But first, how much would just a Joe team cost to maintain without any extravaganza? Well, if you take support and maintenance personnel into consideration, G.I. Joe would be about battalion-sized, I'd say. Something that costs about $166 million per year.
That's not counting all their specialized equipment.
I really don't have the time to factor in all their vehicles, and even if I did, it would be an exercise in futility, since although I could tally up the cost of a single Tomcat and Hummer, etc., I can't do that for things that don't exist in the real world, like a Havoc or artillery laser, to say nothing of something like the friggin' mobile command center. I have no idea how much a real-life sandcrawler would cost.
This is also why I won't be doing this for Cobra. Most of their stuff is pure fantasy.
I mean, battle android troopers, his tanks? Yeah, good luck finding out how much a trouble bubble would cost.
Anyway, on to the list.
Number 6. The Pit. This is a very tricky one, as there have been various pits of various sizes, and there's no way to know how much construction went into them. If it's an old missile silo that's been converted and expanded, costs could be as low as 10 to 15 million. If we're talking something like NORAD, a base carved into a mountain, well, adjusted for inflation, NORAD cost about 1.2 billion. But for the sake of this list, we're gonna go with the conservative 15 million here. Number 5. Lady J's Diamond Javelin. Okay, that thing was huge and nicely cut too.
A diamond that size would be worth about 50 million bucks.
That's quite the thing to put on the end of a javelin. It's also the most unnecessary thing on this list, as the purpose, to cut through things, ice in this case, can be achieved by using the tiniest diamond possible. I mean, big or small, the diamond would be just as hard, so one the size of a pinhead would do the job just as well. Number 4. A giant robot. Specifically, I'm talking about the Star Brigade armor bot.
Now I know what you're thinking.
But Timur, you handsome fellow, you said you couldn't estimate the cost of something that doesn't exist in the real world, like the mobile command center. And yes, that's true, we don't have any giant robots, yet, so I wouldn't be able to figure out how much it would cost.
But do you know who could figure it out? The Japanese!
Yes, Japan, which pretty much invented giant robots, has the answer. Specifically, the Japan Science and Technology Agency calculated how much it would cost to build a Gundam.
Why did they do this? I don't know, because Japan.
And it would cost $725 million. Now, the armor bot is no Gundam. It has far less features and isn't anything close to being as maneuverable. It's more like a giant version of that alien's mech loader. So I'm guessing it would cost a little under a third of that, like 200 million. That's still quite a large amount though. Number 3. A space shuttle.
Finally, something we can get pretty specific about.
Now, we're not gonna build the Joes for the entire space shuttle program, and instead give them the benefit of decades of innovation by NASA. As such, the last real space shuttle built was the Endeavour and cost $2.2 billion to build. So that would be the cost for the Joe team.
Except no, it's twice that because somehow they have two.
You have the Defiant and the Crusader. Plus, if you factor in the reusable booster and the crawler, might put it at 3 times that, or 6.6 billion. Number 2. An aircraft carrier. Okay, you knew both the Defiant and the USS Flag would be on this list. In the Flag's case, I'm gonna be fair and mention that it is not a full-sized carrier.
Well, obviously, it's a toy.
But what I mean is that it's a pocket or light carrier, smaller than, say, a Nimitz class, so it doesn't cost as much as that. It's still a hefty sum at $7 billion though.
Which is also about how much a mint and sealed box USS Flag costs nowadays.
And the number 1 most expensive thing in G.I. Joe's budget is the G.I. Joe Space Station.
Okay, once again, I know what you're thinking.
that thing doesn't exist. And while that's true, we do have an actual space station, creatively called the International Space Station. This one looks nothing like that. It's an homage to the one from 2001 A Space Odyssey. It's not as large as that one, but quite a bit larger than the ISS. And yes, it is the G.I.Joe space station. They called it that in the cartoon.
Next up, G.I.Joe Space Station Delta.
It wasn't built by all of humanity in the interest of cooperation. It wasn't our best last hope for peace, nor was it near a wormhole. So anyway, the ISS cost 150 billion, that's billion, to build. And this one is quite a bit larger, so it would probably cost 2 or 3 times as much. Let's split the difference and say this beauty cost 400 billion. That's certainly no moon.
Adding up everything we've seen today, that makes about $414 billion.
Factoring in all the other crap the Joes have, I'm gonna round that up and say the G.I. Joe team's budget is $420 billion. Or roughly half or a quarter, depending on how you calculate it, of the real US military budget.
And yes, I deliberately picked 420 because if Elon Musk can make stupid tweet jokes, so can I, and I am much smarter than him.
So, that was a fun little exercise, trying to figure out how much the Joe stuff would cost. Utterly pointless, but I'm not trying to win the Nobel Prize in economics here.
Well, I'll see you next time, everybody, and hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing?